Welcome, listeners, to a journey back in time, returning to the radiant days of youth. In 1989, the bell at Bayside High School rang, ushering in a new era for teen television. The show Saved by the Bell premiered and quickly created a powerful pop culture phenomenon, with its story revolving around friendship, puppy love, school troubles, and lessons on growing up. The work not only achieved resounding commercial success, but also etched itself deeply into the memories of the entire 80s and early 90s generation. But behind those classic characters and carefree smiles were actors with very distinct destinies. More than 3 decades have passed, and time, like a rushing river, has carved indelible marks upon their lives. Some continued to shine brightly under the stage lights. Some chose the quiet life of a lawyer or teacher, and some had to stop their journey in regret. Today, let us quiet our hearts to look back on the tumultuous paths and honor the stars of Saved by the Bell who have departed this life. Dustin Diamond as Samuel Screech Powers. In the colorful tapestry of Saved by the Bell, if Zach Morris was the charming prince, then Samuel Screech Powers was the comedic soul, the awkward yet sincere heartbeat of the group. With his signature curly hair, loud outfits, and clumsy mannerisms, Dustin Diamond, only 12 years old at the time, brilliantly embodied the kind-hearted nerd. For over a decade, from the early days through the spin-offs, Screech provided endless laughter with his clumsy charm, becoming a symbol of loyalty and innocence. However, Dustin Diamond's life after the bell at Bayside stopped ringing was a long struggle to find himself. The shadow of Screech was too large, so vast that it swallowed his true identity. Dustin worked tirelessly to escape the image of the lovable fool. He tried his hand at stand-up comedy, reality TV, and even wrestling. At times, the public saw him flailing in desperation. From the release of the controversial book Behind the Bell, which exposed the dark corners of the backstage, to noisy legal troubles, it seemed like the scream of a man wanting to be recognized for his true talent, rather than forever being boxed into the shape of a child. Behind the headlines, Dustin remained a man yearning for love and dedication. He went through ups and downs in romance and the stumbles of adulthood, but he never gave up his passion for the arts. There was a bittersweet connection between the role and his life. Screech on screen was always optimistic despite the trouble, while the real Dustin had to face the harshness of fame without the protective shield of innocence. He lived a tumultuous life, always trying to prove he was more than just a role. Sadly, that stormy journey came to an abrupt and painful halt. In early 2021, Dustin was diagnosed with stage 4 small cell lung cancer, an aggressive and devastating disease. Just a few weeks later, on February 1, 2021, Dustin Diamond took his final breath at the age of 44. His passing left a massive void in the hearts of fans and served as a sad reminder of the price of early fame. The legacy he left behind is not just Screech's laughter, but a lesson on the struggle for survival in the harsh world of showbiz. Jack Angelus as Mr. Tuttle. Leaving the mischievous group of students, we turn to the respected teachers of Bayside, and we cannot fail to mention Jack Angelus in the role of Mr. Tuttle. Appearing for the first time at the age of 38, Jack Angelus brought to this driving instructor and music teacher an eccentric yet incredibly lovable energy. Mr. Tuttle, with a personality that was both irritable and enthusiastic, frequently had humorous arguments with Mr. Belding, but was always dedicated to teaching life lessons to his students. Although the role wasn't extensive, Angelus's charm made Mr. Tuttle an indispensable piece of the puzzle. What few people know is that acting was only a small part of Jack Angelus's multi-talented life. Outside the studio, he was a true intellectual. Jack Angelus was not only an actor but also a sharp lawyer, a law professor, and a gifted orator. He possessed a keen intellect and a burning passion for justice, having argued before prominent judges. His move to California was to balance a serious legal career with his soaring passion for the arts. He lived 2 parallel lives to the fullest: a funny teacher on screen and a solemn, respected lawyer in real life. Jack Angelus's private life was kept discreet, reflecting the character of an intellectual man of honor. He did not chase after frivolous glory, but viewed art as a stroll to satisfy his soul. The contrast between a quirky Mr. Tuttle on film and a learned law professor Angelus in reality is a testament to his versatility and inner depth. He lived a rich life, dedicated to both the arts and the law, leaving his mark on both the university lecture hall and the small screen. However, on May 2, 2009, after a short hospital stay, Jack Angelus quietly passed away, leaving the cause of death still a mystery. His departure was not loud, but it left deep regret for those who knew his talent on both stages, the courtroom and the film set. Pamela Koch as Miss Simpson. Another character who brought hearty laughter to the audience was Miss Simpson, played by the veteran actress Pamela Koch. When she joined Saved by the Bell, she was 61 years old, bringing seasoned experience to embody the hard-of-hearing English teacher. The tragicomic situations where Miss Simpson misheard her students became classic comedic segments. Pamela Koch turned the character's impairment into a charming trait, proving that humor can come from the most ordinary things. Pamela Koch's life was a long, inspiring story of perseverance and passion. An immigrant to the U.S. in 1960 BC, she worked tirelessly to build a new life, from modeling to stage acting before fully dedicating herself to television. Her career spanned more than 4 decades with countless diverse roles. Audiences may remember her as Lavinia Peach in Days of Our Lives, or through guest roles in Star Trek and The King of Queens, since she was the embodiment of the character actor, those who may not play the lead, but always light up every frame they appear in. She lived a life dedicated to art until her final years, although she often played supporting roles in real life. Pamela Koch was the protagonist in the story of overcoming difficulties. A strong, independent, and talented immigrant woman, she didn't just act. She inspired young actors with her professionalism and love for the craft, regardless of age. She was living proof that passion for art has no retirement age. However, that enduring artistic journey finally came to a close. On May 4, 2022, Pamela Koch passed away at the age of 93. News of her passing was initially overshadowed by false reports, but eventually, the sad truth was confirmed, leaving regret for a generation of viewers who grew up with her smile. John Sanderford as Derek Morris. In the family portrait of Saved by the Bell, the character Derek Morris, Zach Morris's father, played by John Sanderford, appeared as a model of the modern father, busy but charming and authoritative. At 37 years old when he took the role, Sanderford successfully portrayed a successful man always trying to balance career and family, creating an interesting counterpoint to his scheming son, Zach. He brought a sense of mature reality to the dreamy school setting. John Sanderford's career did not stop at the role of the busy father. He was a familiar face in American television and cinema, with a massive portfolio of roles. From his debut in Ryan's Hope, and he made his mark in the Stephen King adaptation Firestarter, and later the horror film Leprechaun. Sanderford was a chameleon actor, able to transition smoothly from romance and comedy to horror. He did not seek loud fame, but chose to assert himself through the depth of each character, whether leading or supporting. In real life, John Sanderford was a private man, a true laborer of the arts. He did not let the Hollywood glare blind him, always keeping a peaceful private space for himself. His dedication and professionalism were respected by colleagues. There was an interesting similarity between him and the character Derek Morris. Both were men of work and responsibility, but if Derek sometimes neglected family, the real-life Sanderford cherished every simple moment. However, on September 22, 2023, in Burbank, California, John Sanderford took his final breath, closing a diverse artistic journey. His passing was a quiet but regretful note, reminding us of the silent but precious contributions of actors who spent their lives honoring the art of storytelling. George McDaniel as David Spano. Returning to the parents of Bayside, we meet George McDaniel as David Spano, the strict but dearly loving father of Jesse Spano. At age 47, McDaniel portrayed a conservative father, always worried about his daughter and skeptical of her boyfriend Slater. Although the role did not have much screen time, his resolute eyes and poised demeanor created a very real, very human David Spano, representing the feelings of countless fathers with teenage daughters. George McDaniel was a familiar face, a diligent workman of the arts in Hollywood. His career spanned decades with roles in hit works like The Last Starfighter, This Is Spinal Tap, or Lionheart. Yes, directors often entrusted him with roles requiring authority and maturity, such as military officers, police, or businessmen. His acting style was not flashy, but steady and subtle, persuading audiences through the authenticity of every small gesture. In real life, George McDaniel was a private man, almost shunning all Hollywood glitz and scandal. He chose a simple life with his family, viewing his acting career as a journey of perseverance rather than a race for fame. Friends and colleagues remember him as a polite gentleman, always ready to help young actors. The similarity between him and the character David Spano was his protective nature and his quiet, steadfast personality. He was a pillar, both on screen and in his own family. On March 24, 2023, George McDaniel passed away in Ventura, California, due to complications from cancer. He departed quietly, just as he had lived, causing no media stir but leaving a respectful silence in the hearts of true film lovers. Casey Kasem as himself. In the history of Saved by the Bell, there was a special appearance that wasn't acting, but the presence of a legend, Casey Kasem. Appearing in 1991 at the age of 59, he played himself, the iconic host, bringing his warm voice and famous courteous demeanor to the show. Casey Kasem didn't need to act, for he himself was a cultural icon. His voice was a bridge between generations, the sound of nostalgia and music charts. Casey Kasem's career had become legendary long before he visited Bayside. He was the father of American Top 40, the show that changed the way the world listened to music starting in 1970. Furthermore, he was the classic voice for Shaggy in the Scooby-Doo series. But what was most respectable was his character. Casey Kasem was a man of principle. He once quit a role in Transformers because he felt the script was offensive to Arabs, his ancestral heritage. He always fought for respect and peace, using his voice not just to introduce songs but to spread love. However, the final years of this legend were a heartbreaking tragedy. Casey Kasem had to battle Lewy body dementia, which gradually stripped him of his bodily control and even his golden voice. More painfully, his family became embroiled in bitter disputes over his care, becoming the focus of the media. On June 15, 2014, Casey Kasem passed away, closing a glorious life that ended in sadness. The legacy he left remains his familiar sign-off. Keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Mark Blankfield as James. If one were to look for a character who brought the most chaotic laughter to Saved by the Bell, it would undoubtedly be James, the eccentric actor-waiter played by Mark Blankfield. With a genius for mimicry and explosive energy, James was always ready to transform into all sorts of bizarre roles to help Zach's gang. Mark Blankfield, 40 years old when he joined the show, brought an exaggerated, crazy, yet incredibly compelling comedic style, turning every scene he was in into a unique comedy stage. Mark Blankfield was not just a comedian, he was an artist of transformation, starting his career in comedy theater and gaining fame through the show Fridays. He possessed superb physical acting abilities. This talent caught the eye of legendary director Mel Brooks, leading him to iconic roles in Robin Hood Men in Tights and Dracula, Dead and Loving It. Blankfield had the ability to switch characters in the blink of an eye, a rare skill that made him a master of the parody genre. His career was a series of colorful roles, always leaving the audience roaring with laughter. Behind those crazy roles was a Mark Blankfield with a free and liberal artistic soul. He lived with the philosophy of bringing joy to life, using laughter as a healing medicine. The contrast between his exaggerated roles and his profound, subtle real-life persona was his most attractive point. He was proof that to perform comedy intelligently, an artist needs a sharp intellect and a keen observation of life. However, that endless source of energy finally had to fade. Mark Blankfield passed away on March 20, 2024. At the age of 73, he departed, taking with him a unique comedic style, but leaving behind endless laughter and a lesson on living life to the fullest with passion. Henry Paulus II as Mr. Bainbridge. Continuing the list of memorable teachers is Henry Paulus II, who played Mr. Bainbridge. At 47, he gave the character a dignified, strict appearance that concealed wit and sharp intelligence. Mr. Bainbridge was not just a teacher, but the embodiment of sophistication, a mentor who knew how to challenge and provoke thought in his students through his noble demeanor. Few people know that behind that dignified exterior was a talented voice artist with a magical voice. Henry Paulus II is most famous for voicing the Scarecrow in Batman the Animated Series. His cold, trembling, yet haunting voice turned the Scarecrow into one of the most terrifying and psychologically deep villains in animation history. Additionally, he was a classically trained stage actor, specializing in complex psychological roles. For Polis, voice and acting were artistic weapons, vehicles for him to explore the hidden corners of the human soul. Outside the spotlight, Henry Polis II was a lover of classical art, passionate about painting and music. He devoted much effort to teaching, passing the torch to the younger generation of actors. He lived a life rich in poetry, where art was not just a profession but a reason for living. The contrast between the terrifying villains he voiced and the kind artistic soul in real life was the unique beauty of the man. However, that great quiet voice fell silent in 2013. Henry Polis II passed away, leaving a legacy of weighty roles and a standard for voice acting that future generations will always admire. Mary Pat Gleason as Madame Oof. One of the guest roles that left the strongest impression was Madame Oof, the French teacher played by Mary Pat Gleason. Although appearing only briefly when she was 39, Madame Oof's passionate, direct, and somewhat eccentric demeanor made the classroom more lively than ever. Gleason proved that there are no small roles, only actors who know how to make themselves shine. Mary Pat Gleason's career was a powerful testament to the power of perseverance and genuine talent. She appeared in over 50 films and countless television shows, from tragic roles in The Crucible to comedic roles in A Cinderella Story. But what made people admire her most was her one-woman play, Stopping Traffic. This was not just a work of art, but her heart's voice regarding her persistent battle with bipolar disorder. This work later became teaching material on mental health, turning her personal pain into a healing remedy for the community. Mary Pat Gleason's life was not a bed of roses. She had to fight illness both physically and mentally throughout her life. But instead of collapsing, she chose to face it with art and humor. She lived sincerely, bravely exposing her emotional wounds to find empathy and help others. She was the embodiment of a real-life Madame Oof, strong, direct, and full of compassion. On June 2, 2020, Mary Pat Gleason passed away from uterine cancer. Her departure was a great loss to the arts community and those struggling with mental illness. She left the world not only her roles, but the flame of an extraordinary will to live. Gary Beach as Gem Diamond. Gary Beach as Gem Diamond, the talented, scheming manager. At 42, with fiery energy and an exaggerated acting style, Gary Beach turned Gem Diamond into a character both hateful and lovable, bringing necessary chaos to the plot. This role seemed tailor-made for his innate ability to command the stage. But television was just a small playground for Gary Beach's immense talent. He was truly a legend of the Broadway sanctuary. He was nominated for a Tony Award for the role of Lumiere in Beauty and the Beast. But the pinnacle of his career was the role of Roger Debris in The Producers. This role earned him the prestigious Tony Award and affirmed his status as a top musical theater star. The fact that he took on this role both on stage and in the 2005 film version is proof that no one could replace his charm and talent. Gary Beach's life was a colorful musical, always vibrant and full of light. He lived to dedicate the most sublime moments to the audience. The glitz of Gem Diamond on film seemed to be a small reflection of Gary Beach himself in real life. Always enthusiastic, always burning brightly, and always wanting to bring joy to everyone. He was a keeper of the flame for theater arts, inspiring countless generations of musical actors. However, on July 17, 2018, in Palm Springs, California, the stage lights of his life went out. Gary Beach passed away at the age of 70, with the cause of death kept private. He departed, but his laughter, singing voice, and positive energy will forever echo in theaters and in the hearts of those who loved Saved by the Bell.